Now, the microbiome, of course, is not a new trend. It's already there for a number of years. But we would like to take it into the microbiome beyond digestive health, so other health benefits. So, if we look at the microbiome, we first have to think about, the fact that the bacteria were in the world long before us. And so humans evolved in a microbial world and they had to survive in a microbial world. And throughout the course of human evolution, microbes colonized all body surfaces, and including also the mucosal surfaces associated with the alimentary, respiratory, and also the reproductive tracts. And in order to survive, humans and animals developed physical barriers, like, for instance, a tight skin to protect them from the bacteria, but also chemical protectors, like an acidic stomach, or making sure that we had an adaptive immune system. So this was a great way to keep the bacteria out, but rather than excluding microorganisms, humans also selected and maintained specific microorganisms and established a symbiotic relationship. And this is something that we look more into, and that science is also really succeeding in. So how do we get all those microbes into our body and on our body? Most of that is through the food, through our diet. So for a large part of human evolution, diets were based on raw and unprocessed foods, and microbes came into us through that food. However, the last 2 centuries, diets underwent a major change because of the development of modern food processing and preservation methods. And as a result, people live in increasingly hygienic environments with fewer and less diverse microbial exposure. Now, the question is, of course, why is this important? Research suggests that less exposure to bacteria lead to the rise of contemporary so-called lifestyle diseases. You can think about, for instance, asthma or eczema or Crohn's disease. And what we see is that the exposure of non-harmful microbes in food is an important beneficial source of microbial stimuli, which may engage with the mucosal surface of the digestive tract. They might fine-tune your immune system and bolstering gut function. And actually what we see is that these bacteria, which for instance can be coming from probiotics or from fermented foods, actually that numerous studies showed that there are potential health benefits and that they actually help to reduce the risk of those lifestyle diseases. So it's important actually to add back into our diet these bacteria. And like I said, they can come from fermented foods like cheese or yogurt, but they can also come from specific probiotics. And what's important here is that not all probiotics or not all bacteria are the same. So they're very specific, and you need to find the right ones that give a positive benefit to health. Maybe to go a little bit more deeper into one of the areas where we see a lot of activity, which is the microbiome and the effect of the microbiome on the brain, on the cognitive health. And this is all related to the gut-brain axis. The gut-brain axis is a bidirectional communication channel between the central and enteric nervous system, linking emotional and cognitive centers of the brain, with the peripheral intestinal functions. And recent advances in research have described the importance of the gut microbiota in influencing these interactions. And these interactions can go both ways. So, for instance, from the gut microbiota to the brain, by producing and expression and turnover of neurotransmitters like serotonin, for instance, or neurotrophic factors, but also by the protection of the intestinal barrier, the modulation of enteric sensory efferents, or producing bacterial metabolites. On the other side, from the brain to the microbiota, there can be an alteration in motility, for instance, or in mucus and biofilm production. So it's really the messages go both ways. There's also quite a bit of clinical evidence on the microbiota gut-brain axis interactions, and they come mainly from association studies, where we see a microbiome dysbiosis with cognitive disorders like autism or anxiety, depression, but also with functional gastrointestinal disorders. And I think a good example there is the irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS, where you see a disruption of these complex relationships. And of course, a better understanding of these alterations could really provide new targeted therapies. And again, what we see also that influence in the microbiota by specific probiotics, for instance, has shown the first examples of a positive impact on cognitive disorders in specific clinical trials. On the right side of this slide, you see a completely different example, which is all about oral health. And maybe you are not aware, but also in your oral cavity, there is a microbiome, which is very important for your oral health. It's important, for instance, for caries prevention. And what has been shown is a postbiotic, which is called HM6, and it comes from a strain that is derived from breast milk. But this postbiotics has a positive effect and decreases the risks for caries prevention. So also here we see the impact on the microbiome on health, apart from digestion. And if we go to the next slide, we see another example which leads nicely into what Lisa also explained about energy and sportive activities. And this is all about the digestion of protein and the uptake of amino acids in the blood. And what we see also here is that probiotic, which is mainly used for digestive health, also has a positive effect on the uptake on essential and total amino acids, and not only from a dairy protein, but also from a plant protein. And this relates again to what Nathan explained at the beginning, that more and more people are looking for alternatives for dairy. And this specific interaction between the microbiome and protein digestion also helps in the uptake of amino acids from plant protein.